Alrighty, what is up, guys? Evan Aldo. Really important, really big video today. A lot has happened in the market. Some crazy times we're in right now. Let's get right into it. If you enjoy the content, smash the like button and check out the Discord and the new free crypto DCA course down below, completely free. Now let's get right into it. So basically, the main thing that we're looking at here is what I kind of have been guessing with these RSIs on the weekly. We confirmed the green dot and, kind of what I wrote out here, potentially, coming down farther. Timeline is now I'm going to have to probably change this. I wanted to keep this from my kind of original timeline of potentially coming down to low 20s in October. We've been a lot, slower and more boring than some may have guessed. Kind of you want things to be more exciting, but you can't always get what you want, unfortunately. But I think this general, prediction is still somewhat intact right now. And what I think is this VWAP on the weekly is going to kind of come down. We're going to potentially into the end of the year, November, December, most likely now, maybe even early next year, potentially make a higher low here. Most likely area is going to be, I think, low 20s to high teens. 300 weekly moving averages at around 21K, I believe, right now. Could be, let's actually look at that because I haven't looked at that in a minute. Just want to see where that is at the moment, because that's going to be a huge place. I mean, that's essentially, you did stay below it a good amount here, but you've never really lost this area, significantly. You've never really, the first time you really tested it was the pandemic. And then here, you were below it for a month, like I said, but you never really lost it significantly. Now, a double bottom with that would be around 21K, which I think is going to be a huge place. I think Bitcoin dominance potentially, once we get there, will be at a high 50s, probably high 50%. And then, that's kind of your no-brainer time to be getting into altcoins. That's probably your once every 4 year, this could be the last, major bull run where alts go crazy potentially. The next one. So this could be your opportunity to really get into alts once that happens. But in the meantime, they will probably bleed against Bitcoin, quite a bit more. Now, let's move down to, and also the last thing I wanted to mention here is this green dot, very similar, I think, to how this one right here, very similar to this one right here. You just broke down, you had some green, then you just broke down. So we may be seeing something like that over the course of the next few months or so. If we move down to some lower time frames, such as the 3-day, you had your gapped RSIs, they came up, now they're curving back down. You had some jump up from that, now you're curving back down. You also did test your 200 weekly moving average, which is a huge place, and it does look like you're rejecting from it now. You hit that point, and some red days after it. Kind of looks like you'll continue downward. Gapped RSIs in the daily as well. Red dot in the 2-day. 2-day coming into the green, but my guess is that you kind of just roll over, have this act as resistance rather than support. Kind of my estimate. Same with kind of what's happening on the daily. I think the daily is kind of forecasting what's going to happen with the 2-day here. Now, if we move on to a more marked up chart, right here, look at maybe our 12-hour. You're getting the red X and market cipher A. Like that, red X, they don't happen too often. They bring you, if we compare it to that one right there, that brings us down a good amount there. We're down to about high 26s, 26.8 right there. So I think that could generally be the next big area. If we lose this, local kind of volume range, let's move that over a little bit. Lose that local volume range right there, same area, 26.8, I think is a big place that we should look at next. Coming up with your VWAP right here, money flow not terrible on your 6-hour. That's more of the bullish case to come back up to the highs here, potentially 28K. Again, maybe punish a lot of the people that shorted late right here. So keep that in mind. That could be that possibility right there. And ultimately, I do think, though, the swing shorts are potentially what's gonna be the big thing here. The swing shorts are, especially when you look at, the weekly's not getting a red dot just yet in Bitcoin, but especially with ETH bleeding against it, I think the ETH swing short is a big thing right now. And then if you look at the 3-hour, money flow coming out, your VWAP trying to curve back down, I think this could break down and bring us down to 26.8. Potentially, if you want to short down here, that could be a good idea. If you guys are interested in trying to trade this, if you know what you're doing, if you're an experienced trader, check out the FAIRDESK promo down below. Any members of the VIP Discord who have signed up with my link with FAIRDESK will get an additional 15%, or excuse me, I believe at least an additional 10% and trading fee discounts on that, trading for rebates, so trading fee discounts on that exchange. We also do a $100 promo every week for only my audience down below for FAIRDESK. So check it out if you guys are interested. Really good exchange that does not require KYC or a VPN. So that's good. Really enjoy that. So yeah. And then same thing here, kind of that jump off of this area. Blood diamond on your hourly could kind of play out like that, bring you back down. A little bit neutral on your 30. And then short term, I mean, you are kind of seeing some weird kind of, reverse head and shoulder type thing, I guess. If you want to look at this, that's kind of it's a weird pattern, but here to there would bring you up potentially a little bit higher, coming back up to 27.8. So if you do jump up, bullish case, come up to 27.8 right there, potentially tomorrow if we see another green day. But I think on the macro, things still look really bearish. I think I forgot to look at the 2-week coming up with the VWAP right there. And the last thing I wanted to show you here, guys, was the monthly, which is interesting with the green dot on the monthly. But keep in mind, guys, if we do lose kind of if we go back to 26.8, I think this is, at least on regular candles, this is gone. This green dot is gone. It's not a strong green dot, especially with this VWAP being above the zero line for so long. That is not a strong green dot right there. And I think you could easily just come lower here. And, potentially that money flow could be the first time we see the red in the money flow in Bitcoin. If we do see that, that's, I think, a really good opportunity for buying. So yeah. Keep in mind, though, we probably will bottom out before that does turn red if it's similar to the NASDAQ after the dot-com bubble. Now, let's move on to Ethereum a little bit here. So Ethereum, if you look at the weekly here, we're getting a red dot, and your RSIs are starting to curve downward. Red dot and a money flow crossover right after you had this green dot. So this is kind of nullifying. This whole red dot is kind of nullifying the notion of the green dot bringing us up higher. On a lot of fundamentals, ETH isn't even that great right now in terms of being inflationary and that type of thing. 17 bear on market side for DBSI. Money flow is still deep. If you break down from this channel, you have a technical target around 1440. So that's what I think we could be potentially headed towards next. Right now, you're probably seeing a little bit of a bounce off of this area, obviously. And nothing looks too good on these time frames so far. Money flow is just coming out on all of these, essentially. You do have a green dot, but if you look at money flow here in the 5 hour, I think, if anything, it'll probably maybe bring you back up to 610 or one of these areas, and then I think you'll eventually reject from this area. I mean, bullish case would be all the way back up here if you keep being range bound, generally jumping from these highs and lows right here. So yeah, but ultimately I think this 3 hour, it is deep in the money flow, but right there it was pretty deep. Okay, that did mark that bottom, then he kind of came up. So that'll be something interesting to look at. That'll definitely be something interesting to look at. If we do look at, let's turn this off so you can see the candles better. That kind of jump up, acting as resistance there. And then trigger wave there, but that doesn't mean too much. It's kind of like Bitcoin, that really weird, look how it's kind of trying to form that reverse head and shoulder, pattern thing right there. But I don't know if that's really going to play out too well. I mean, potentially you could jump back up, just like Bitcoin, that place of support resistance, 16, 17 right here, 16.10 could be a place to look. Money flow coming up, trigger wave on your 10-minute. This is the main bullish case. In the short term, if this does play out, you could see us back up to 16.10 potentially. In this environment, based on, ETH just keeps bleeding against Bitcoin, if you're going to be going long, I would probably say it's a better shot of going long on Bitcoin rather than Ethereum. Be careful going long in general. I got stopped out of scalp long this morning. Then I finally entered a scalp long after I kind of got wicked out. I got wicked out twice, actually, to be completely transparent. Not something I'm too happy about. I was a little too trigger happy after the first one to get back in, but then the third one kind of made up for it, jumping up. So that's that. And then ultimately, we'll talk about some altcoins in a minute, but I think there's a lot of swing short opportunities there. If you guys want more info on that, check out the Aldo Empire VIP Discord down below. So yeah, and that's ultimately coming down right there, and then money flow kind of coming deeper on the 6 hour, and ultimately it's kind of coming up there almost, and then I think this is going to just keep coming down, and I believe that we could break down from this area, and if we do, you're coming down potentially a lot for Bitcoin versus ETH, maybe another 30% down. So keep that in mind. But once we get down to these areas, potentially if you follow this trajectory, it could take some time. A year from now, no, I think it's going to be quicker because you had the jump up there and then you had the big final drop down here, which is what we could be looking at, right? Kind of this area right there. So yeah, potentially 0.03 could be a big place. Look for money flow to get deep there. Bitcoin dominance we'll look at quickly. We're almost up to the highs of June, and I think we will get there relatively soon. I think in the short term, you're probably going to break bullish out of this pattern right here, and then 54 could be the next big place. You do have a technical target all the way up at 58. I am kind of thinking you might get up that high. Nothing's looking like it wants to slow down just yet. The time to potentially get into alts, though, and I talk about this obviously in my DCA course, completely free, like I mentioned, up to this area with these RSIs, up to kind of this area. So whenever that may happen, once you get up higher with these RSIs, potentially in December or later this early next year, and probably the next red dot too may give you what you need. That's probably where you're kind of done for Bitcoin dominance potentially, or at least, kind of like this high, or excuse me, kind of like this September 2019 high. Excellent place. This is where, ETH bottomed out against Bitcoin. So excellent place to kind of get in. And then the real bottoms in, obviously, it was slightly lower here. The kind of March 2020 with the pandemic was obviously a really good place to buy. So, yeah. And moving on to a couple of the altcoins right now, I want to look at Chainlink. I think this one, I got a nice trade set up on this one in the Discord, but I think this one, it's probably going to do what it's always done here. Look at that pattern, probably going to come back down to this lower area and just repeat what it's done since freaking, June of 22, over a year now, which is pretty wild. So yeah, ultimately, I think that's kind of a no-brainer right there. I mean, even if it fails, you got a high probability of winning. You just take the highest probability setups. That's kind of how trading is done. That's the most important thing to really learn in trading. It's all a game of probability. Let's move on to AVAX right here. A lot of these are forming, especially on your 2-day trigger waves to the downside. This one's printing, confirms in a day. Fierce rejection off of this, big, kind of support resistance area from the lows of 2021. And yeah, looks like, I don't know where you're going to end up, but it looks like you could come down to $5 next. It's probably their next big significant place right here. So keep that in mind. What I think for a lot of these alts is going to be, I don't think this 2-week green dot is going to give you much here for AVAX. Could be wrong, but I think it's going to be the next one. We want to see potentially a bullish div. When are you going to see that? Later this year, early next year, and I think after that you're kind of home free. So yeah. And then right here, $3.83. And we're just losing. Polkadot making kind of lower lows. Testing these lows kind of from October of 2020, which is interesting. So you may get a jump here. So this is kind of reminding me how AVAX was, that just lone thing just bleeding like a week or two ago. And I'm not really seeing too much hope just yet, but we got to keep evaluating this. And yeah, monthly red dot that's kind of playing out, but that next green dot, maybe what you need there. I want to look at the 2-week as well. This is kind of coming up now. Where could you forecast where we would see potentially a bull div? Early next year, March or something. When is the Fed currently favored to pivot? Is going to be around May right now. It could be earlier depending on what the S&P 500 does. I think that's going to, if that gets anywhere close to making close to the 2022 lows, I think they're going to start to pivot. So I think once they do, that's kind of a no-brainer where the next altcoin season will probably start, next bull run will start. So yeah. And then if we look at one of the old favorites, Cardano, similar to Polkadot right now, I think that you're probably going to, start your next kind of descent downward. Look at this red X here. Next red X may complete that. These all have been, 100% of the time have worked in this bear market since September 21. Red X is on your 3-day. So unless there's something weird happens here, or unless it doesn't confirm, you're probably gonna, if it's like that, that's not going to be a good one. I think you kind of get diminished declines as you go forward here and you get to the bottom of this kind of bear market, but could be like that, lower low 20 cents. It could be worse, something like this potentially. Let's see. That's your case for 14, 15. My guess is probably somewhere before January You know, I would probably map it out more like into November. I think November could be a kind of big place for this to potentially bottom out. So we'll keep an eye on this. But yeah, that's that. And then let's move. The last thing we'll look at is the S&P 500. So I'm kind of thinking that the S&P 500, you know how we saw Bitcoin kind of holding up better than the S&P 500 over, you know, the past like few weeks, past month, I guess. I think we're going to see that kind of the opposite of that. And I think this could potentially jump up a bit here, get to a technical target up at around 440, and then reject from that area. It may not though, because we're in a more kind of bearish place, but I think there's a good shot when you look at this, look at the S&P 500, the SPY here, that you can continue forward. This looks a lot more bullish than Bitcoin, but on the macro, you know, red dot in the monthly. And if we do kind of forecast, you know, what could potentially happen here, look at the first red Heikin-Ashi candle there. If you compare it like this, that would be that trajectory into June of 24. Fed is right now favored to pivot in May. Normally things bottom out after they pivot. If we do bottom, you know, pivot in May or something, maybe you bottom in June a bit lower, you know, 330, I mean, 320, 330. Interest rates, I think, are going to gradually, you know, in the second half of 2024, I think interest rates are going to go down a good amount. We're going to see some money printing, and we're going to see a lot of stuff recover into the election. I think we're going to see a nice kind of 6 months, potentially from June into the election. Nice 5-6 months for things to really recover. That's most likely what I'm looking at. And it's not too much different than what we saw if you look at, where was it? 2015, you know, this election year. It did bottom out, I believe, in January 2016, but it could be more elongated this time. It really depends. You know, I think we're going to get close to these lows, get around 360. Fed's going to give in, start to pivot, and then you'll get a bit of a lower low after. Could be different this time. So yeah, it's going to be interesting too. RFK is running as a bit independent now. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with Biden, with Trump, and all that. So yeah, guys, hope you have a great night. If you want some nice trade setups, all that, by me and 3 other analysts, check out all the Empire Discord down below. All the exchanges down below are the best ones I think to use right now if you don't want KYC, don't want to have to use a VPN. All of those are down below as well. Prime XBT, pretty good for Forex and traditional markets, so check that out down below as well. Anyway, guys, have a good one. Hope you enjoyed the video. Goodbye.